Unit 10, Workbook, Tape Script. My greatest ambition in life had always been I edited the university student magazine. When I graduated, it took me a long time. When I graduated, it took me a long time. I was relieved. I was relieved when. Provincial. A provincial newspaper. To throw oneself into. I threw myself into the job. Little by little. To have doubts about. I began to have doubts about. Little by little, though, I began to have doubts about. At best banal, at worst intrusive. At best banal, at worst intrusive. To hand in one's notice. To hand in one's notice. I handed in my notice. It was a big step. But I don't regret it for a minute. It was a big step, but I don't regret it for a minute. To train as a teacher. I decided to go back to college to train as a teacher. To follow in one's footsteps. Are following in my footsteps. 4 of my students are following in my footsteps. My life changed forever. On my 40th birthday, my life changed forever. I had everything you could ask for. I had everything you could ask for. A devoted husband. A kind and devoted husband. In town. In the center of the city. In the city center. In town. A beautiful house in town. A nanny. A nanny. But everything I worked so hard for, I felt miserable. I felt miserable. Give up one's job. I would give up my job. In town. To sell the house in town. Give the nanny her notice. Pack up. Pack up the children. Self-sufficient. Self-sufficient. We may have fewer things. We may have fewer things. To be made redundant. I'd been made redundant. I was beginning to wonder if Judy suggested we go into business. Judy suggested we go into business. I was very reluctant. I was very reluctant. Catering. Catering. I was very reluctant as I knew nothing about catering. Persuaded. Persuaded me to. Persuaded me to take a risk. But she persuaded me to take a risk. The financial side worked. The financial side worked. And that's where I come in. And that's where I come in. But it's been worth it. But it's been worth it. To make a small but decent profit. We are making a small but decent profit. The future looks good again. And the future looks good again. Anticipated. Anticipated. I anticipated. As I'd anticipated. Struggle to make ends meet. Struggling to make ends meet. To make a living. To make a living. Fit in with. Fit in with the kids. I needed a way to make a living that would fit in with the kids. To take a risk. To take a risk. And that's when I decided to take a risk. Get a loan. Get a loan to buy. Get a loan to buy a bigger house. Take in lodgers. A lodger. Lodgers. Take in lodgers. And that's when I decided to take a risk and get a loan to buy a bigger house and take in lodgers. Help somebody with. Helped me with the loan. My dad helped me with the loan. I was lucky my dad helped me with the loan. It's paid off. But he's really happy because it's paid off. To be paid off. Lodgers. I have 3 lodgers. At a time. I have 3 lodgers at a time. A brilliant way of making a living. It's a brilliant way of making a living. Academic. I wasn't very academic. Do well. Do well at school. Do well in exams. I wasn't very academic and didn't do that well in my exams. In the least. In the least bit worried. I wasn't in the least bit worried. I wasn't in the least bit worried though. To start at the bottom. I was more than happy to start at the bottom. Learn my trade. And learn my trade. To start at the bottom and learn my trade. I was more than happy to start at the bottom and learn my trade. To get an apprenticeship with. To get an apprenticeship with. I was lucky enough to get an apprenticeship with. Every aspect of. Every aspect of. I'm my own boss. I'm my own boss. I have apprentices. I have apprentices of my own. I'm my own boss. I have apprentices of my own. I make a decent living. I make a decent living.